welcome to Roadmap to Revenue. Great to see everyone back. This is our 6th episode. Armin Kakas is with us today. I hope I got that right. He's smiling, so he's a very gracious guy. And we were just talking before the show started, and what a journey you've been on. Tell us just where you're at now and kind of what your role is and what you're working on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Greg. Happy Friday. So I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for a corporate startup called Torqata Data and Analytics. We're part of the largest tire distributor in North America called American Tire Distributors. And so I'll lead commercialization there. And excited to talk to you, Greg. I mean, you have a fantastic background in analytics. I think my own analytics journey sort of mirrors yours. I started out as a business guy. I got my MBA at the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. Fell in love with sort of decision analytics and what we used to call business statistics, and it wasn't data science back then. Right, I'm sort of aging myself, even though
when I started, it was called strategy and research. So
strategy research, that's right, or operations research and things like that. Yeah. And so, I fell in love with that, right? And that was my favorite subjects were decision analytics and, of course, business ethics to some extent. But I started out with General Electric. I joined a commercial leadership program after business school. So the intent was to rotate you every 6 to 8 months. You went to a different business unit and you kind of learned the business. You took on 1 or 2 major initiatives and try to make a difference in that particular business unit. And it was really then where I sort of, augmented my love and interest for analytics, and particularly advanced analytics, right? I sort of, saw in one of my rotations where I led Salesforce effectiveness for a smaller business segment within GE Capital. I saw the power of things like automation and things like doing analytics through coding. And at that point, I started using R, which is now still popular in academia, but I think it's on the decline in data science circles, right, as younger kids migrate towards Python and things like that. But it was really sort of that time where I realized...
Yeah, it's when you stopped doing math, right? You just started doing coding.
That's right. Yeah, there's a way to do things more efficiently than your regular Excel and PowerPoint work, right? And so I did that for a number of years. I transitioned over to consumer products, right? Financial services was really interesting, and General Electric was fantastic to work for, and kind of great, leadership programs and things like that. But just being in consumer products, the fact that you can kind of feel and touch and imagine a product in a much more concrete way was certainly more exciting. And so I was brought on by Miller Course to start up a pricing analytics and strategy team in Bentonville, Arkansas. So lived there for a few years in the mecca of Walmart.
Yeah.
It was about 3 years into it, I was recruited to Best Buy to lead their pricing science team. So very enticing opportunity at that stage. I was still fairly early on in my career, but it was an opportunity to really sort of drive the pricing algorithms that govern Best Buy prices online and in the retail stores as well. So I had a team, in-house team, as well as an offshore team through some consultancies where we actually developed the framework, the strategy, the algorithms. We implemented dynamic pricing. And so it was lots of learning, lots of impact just through the sheer scale of Best Buy. It was about 1.5 years into it. It makes it sound like I'm sort of job hopping frequently, but
well, no, you're not 28. You've had a little longevity in these places. I looked.
Sure,
I looked. Yeah. You did nothing to apologize for.
Yeah. And so I got a really interesting opportunity to actually start a revenue management and analytics team from scratch for a privately held consumer products company. It was an ice cream company based out of Iowa. They opened up an office for largely for marketing, brand management, and then for my team in revenue management. And so it was an interesting opportunity to sort of carve out a team, according to my vision on how pricing and revenue management should be done. Very, very much focused on advanced analytics and analytics-driven capabilities, as opposed to, more sort of tactical and things like that. Assembled a really good team of folks with domain expertise and business expertise, industry know-how, but also a couple of folks with deep advanced analytics knowledge, right? people that can, get into, just heaps and heaps of raw data, transactional data, make sense of it, use coding to drive anything from descriptive analytics to diagnostic analytics to understand what's going on in our business, predictive models to understand, how price changes and promotional changes would impact the business. We built our own organic trade promotion effectiveness and trade promotion optimization system, which was really kind of a cool moment. And yeah, so I did that for about 3 years, and an interesting opportunity came. I never thought that I would work for a tire distributor, right? Like a round rubber product that's otherwise somewhat nondescript for most people. Never imagined. I think now I know more about tires, Greg, than I probably ever wanted to know. But it was interesting, and you've been there in your career, right? Where when I talk to company leadership, right, and this is especially true with our CFO, Bill Williams, and our CEO, Stuart, who are just so passionate about analytics, and particularly advanced analytics, right? They sort of recognize that we're in this era that some people dub the second machine age, others call it Industry 4.0, and they sort of had this recognition that there's a tire distributor that's been around for 100 plus years, and we need to evolve ourselves, and we need to establish some unique differentiation in this industry where we are going to be the leaders in Industry 4.0. And so they were very serious about analytics, not just kind of verbally, but it was a genuine sort of recognition and support for an analytics-driven agenda for the company. And so that really excited me. We moved to...
Yeah, that's a rare event to get that kind of C-suite commitment behind analytics. They often are pushing back on the recommendations.
Very, very rare, very rare. And so we moved from Minneapolis to Charlotte, which was, I think, the right move. Instead of a foot of snow in the middle of May, you're moving to a much more temperate climate. And so, but yeah, it was the right decision. And so it was interesting, Greg, right? You don't hear AI and machine learning and kind of tire distribution in the same.
We don't hear that often anywhere, really, when it comes to revenue generation and corporate startup.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, not a lot, particularly not in traditional industries, right?
Yeah.
So I started with the revenue management organization for ATD. I led their advanced analytics group, and then I hopped over into the Advanced Analytics Center of Excellence for ATD. That was actually founded by my current manager, a brilliant analytics strategist from McKinsey, who sort of shared this vision by our CEO that we're going to transform this industry through data and analytics. And so I was largely brought in, Greg, to kind of start our externally focused analytics efforts, i.e. customer facing, right? So we have, call it 80,000 retailers that American Tire Distributors, our parent company, does business with. In the industry as a whole, we have probably 100 to 120,000 retailers that are tire retailers or auto shops, et cetera, et cetera. There's, a couple of dozen tire manufacturers, there's countless tire distributors. And there's a fundamental problem in this business that doesn't exist in other businesses like consumer products, right? Consumer products, you have, very sort of easy visibility to consumer sell-through, largely through providers like Nielsen and IRI, right? It's a fairly sophisticated operation where key members of the value chain, right? They have very easy visibility to consumer sell-through that informs forecasts, that in turn informs demand forecasts, manufacturers.
Supply chain planning, everything. There's a lot of visibility to what's moving around.
A lot of visibility, and it makes every member of that value chain a lot more effective, right? The tire industry is very inefficient in that sense, right? So there's not great systematic visibility to sort of detailed consumer sell-through, right? It's largely a very aggregate national level. As a result, you have incredible supply chain inefficiencies. You have manufacturers with, 60, 70% fill rates, right? So imagine the consumer products world and Walmart, right? I mean, you would be in deep trouble.
You'd be out of business at 70% fill rate on Tide. Yeah.
That's right.
You'd be dead. It'd be over.
That's right. It'd be over. And so we had this fundamental recognition that this industry, deals with this sort of anemic thing of having anywhere between $1.5 billion to maybe $2-3 billion worth of inefficiencies that are easily solvable with much greater transparency to the data for all players, right? Not just manufacturers.
And is that money the lost revenue or the buffer inventory you have to carry?
It's everything, right? It's largely driven by supply chain, so it's largely buffer inventory, or sort of the cliche expression is, right? You're unable to produce the right product for the right set of customers at the right time, and that's sort of the business problem that exists. Pricing is another element, right? I mean, pricing is very tactical in this industry, like in many traditional industries. It is largely driven by competition or very simple sort of cost plus pricing. So there's a lot of money left on the table in that sense. Promotions, right? There's not clear systematic visibility to promotional effectiveness. Certainly not for promotional optimization, right? So these are huge opportunities that we recognize that need to be uncovered. And so part of that, Greg, was, and sorry, I'm going off in a very long-winded introduction, but I'm very passionate about this subject, right? Part of it was this recognition that we have an opportunity to actually assemble the industry's first sort of data platform, right? To actually collect consumer data, aggregate it, right, in a way that's sort of anonymized and things like that, and provide insights and information back to our partners, participants, retailers, distributors, manufacturers, so they can inform their supply chain planning much more accurately. They can inform their pricing strategies better, enable them to do more effective marketing, and more effective sort of manufacturing efficiency in their factory operations, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was sort of the impetus for forming our corporate startup within ATD. And so I'm part of that corporate startup. We went from maybe call it 10 or a dozen people when I joined in I think September of 2019, soon to be about 61 people.
Wow.
At the end of the year. So we're scaling fast.
And do y'all license out the data to people? Are you licensing out the information to the partners, or?
No. So it's an interesting business model. I think fundamentally we have a couple of things, and this is sort of happening in stages. But right now we have a freemium set of solutions, right? Which is we have three solutions. One aimed at improving sort of pricing operations, pricing insights, pricing efficiency. Another one aimed at improving inventory efficiency. So it's a tool that leverages actual real-time optimization that is aimed at improving a retailer's market coverage, inventory turnover, return on invested inventory. And we have a solution that's around improving total profitability. So not just transactional profitability, but also sort of back-end rebates, dollars that they can earn from manufacturers. And so that also uses real-time optimization.
Got it.
And it's a premium solution, right? We basically partner with retailers who essentially leverage our products to make better decisions. We work with their point of sale providers to ingest the data into their own kind of secure envelope encrypted environment, and we service them SaaS solutions to make their business better. So still very much in the nascency of our company.
Yeah, but it becomes a Nielsen Catalina for the tire industry in the end, right? Because
that's exactly right.
You just got to have eons of cycles of learning and collection. Now, I'll get in trouble, Armin, if I don't ask you questions about your personal journey, because that's what,
Sure.
with tools, right? Because, I mean, the business trajectory is fantastic. And I think it's interesting, just as a summary point on your trajectory. So many of the people who've been on the show end up in the C-suite. They didn't, analytics is showing up there much faster and with more backing. And you're a great case for that. So that's a very exciting and aggressive project. I'm really impressed because the tire I want is never in stock. As an end user, I know the problem. I see it.
Yeah.
So so you've been in the field 15, 20 years roughly, and we ask people, what was the first kind of descriptive tool you use? I'm old enough to say Lotus 1, 2, 3. So okay, that's very embarrassing. But what are you going to do? But what were you using? The very first time you started to analyze things, and what are you using today, just to kind of like describe the past, right?
Yeah. Oh man, I'll kind of tell you my journey. It's certainly we started out with Excel, but way back when I was like 21, and I think I was a product manager, and then later on I was a kind of a retail analyst at Sprint out of an Overland Park, Kansas. Used Excel, used a bit of Crystal Ball. Remember Crystal Ball?
Yeah, sure do.
So,
It's still one of the best thing that Oracle's ever sold, right? I mean, it's still on their website. Someone quoted, "We're using Crystal Ball." I'm like, oh my god, yes.
Yeah. So early on in my career, but this is back in maybe you're gonna laugh at me. This was like 2004, 2005. So Excel and the analysis toolpacks, they ran some simple and multilinear regressions using sort of Excel, and you have to really worry about making sure the data was in the right format and the right order of columns.
No spaces.
No spaces, and things took you forever, right? I mean, you would spend like a week trying to come up with an analysis that is now possible in a matter of seconds, right? And so that was sort of in the call it early mid 2000s. And even after business school, I think Excel is such a powerful force in business still to this day. And I think Microsoft is doing a good job of kind of future proofing Excel. I mean, now you have custom formulas and functions actually that you can actually use.
And add-ins. I've got a lot of good add-ins, partnerships.
That's right. Yeah. And so that kind of morphed into using statistical software. So things like, again, you're going to laugh, and for those that are analytics practitioners, we started using things like Minitab, for example, or SPSS, right? Even at more sort of sophisticated, larger enterprises like Best Buy, we had SAS, right? And nothing against SAS, right? But I know the company itself is struggling with this whole idea of open source being so relevant nowadays, right? And that's what especially younger, sort of PhD, masters in computer science types are gravitating towards open source tools, right? Particularly Python. And so, we've used a lot of the traditional software that has been around in kind of big retailers and most traditional companies, which were out of the box statistical softwares in that sense, right? The Minitabs, SPSS, SASs of the world. It was probably around, call it 2012, when I personally discovered R, and it was out of necessity. We had a small analytics team. We were tasked with just a bunch of different analytics initiatives, creating sort of an in-house pricing optimization suite, creating a promotional effectiveness tool for our client Walmart, right? And so we had to sort of be creative around how do we do this fast in a scalable manner. So I discovered R on my own. It was actually around that time, about 3 years removed from my MBA, when I wanted to get my master's in stats. So I enrolled, I started my master's in stats, and I quickly recognized this is so far removed from what we need to do in corporations, right? Which was much more akin to like a computer science degree, right? Or
some kind of programming language or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so I started learning R, and I fell in love with R. It was like my family, and then R was like right here, And but it made us very, very efficient, right? And so I encouraged my team to actually learn that, and subsequent teams that I've actually led, folks that were in analytical functions, be it at a analyst or a manager level, requirement was that they have some knowledge in either R or Python. So they can do it.
At Concentric, we live off it too, right? It's just so efficient, and you eliminate so many errors that are tied to Excel, and you have so much control. Like even the visualizations you can pre-program, right? It's a very
That's right.
It's underrated. So that kind of gets you through descriptions and diagnostics. What are you using around predicting or prescribing? Where are you at today?
Yeah. So I'll tell you about that. I mean, but back to my comment, right? So we also started using Tableau very heavily, right, for our descriptive analytics, which we found to be quite amazing, actually. And so for predictive and sort of optimization exercises, there's a couple of things that I've experienced, right? So I've been in smaller enterprises where we've done a lot of ad hoc, local predictions on our individual machines, and we've largely used R for that, right? in the team that I'm currently on, right? So Torqata, we have a fantastic team of PhDs, their own domain experts, right? So we have folks that are experts in NLP. We have folks that are perhaps experts in operation research, or perhaps some heavier form of optimizations. And so our lingua franca is Python, like it's popular kind of nowadays in most sophisticated data science environments. So we're a Python shop. That's where we do all of our predictive algorithms. That's where we use all of our optimization algorithms. Python is underscoring, honestly, a lot of the programming frameworks that we have for Torqata as a business entity. We're fully on the cloud, so we use the Google Cloud Platform for a host of things, right? Not just for our compute engine, but also data storage and data pipelines.
Yeah,
and
sure. It's an infrastructure that's getting built into it, right? Just turn it on and it goes.
That's right.
So,
So,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, just thinking about the journey, you've covered like every tool, and you've been in multiple kind of situations and circumstances. Very, probably a wider variety than my career, and mine's pretty broad. What do you see as the next kind of big idea? What's going to happen next, 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Oh man, it's it's an interesting question, Greg. I think there's a couple of things. One is we're certainly playing a part in terms of a kind of a proof of concept and pilot, which is I think blockchains, particularly sort of private or hybrid blockchains, are going to be more and more relevant in industries where supply chain is kind of a heavy portion of their expenditures or their business operations. So I think that's going to become more front and center. And so certainly something that we're looking towards. I think the second piece that's big, Greg, is within the analytics realm, right, is this, whole bifurcation of, data scientists, right? I mean, it's almost like you're morphing into, on the left side, data scientists are going to be morphing much more into the, what I would kind of characterize as like full stack data scientists, right? Folks who are incredible programmers. They're very good data engineers, right? They know how to set up data pipelines, batch or streaming, right? It doesn't matter. They know how to do that. They know how to do, honestly, a bit of UI, right? I mean, they know how to, they're familiar with those frameworks. Know a bit of web development, APIs, and things like that, and certainly models, right? But I think the algorithms are being democratized nowadays, right? I mean, for the most part, you can have out-of-the-box algorithms for predictive analytics, be it natural language processing or image recognition or text-to-speech, speech-to-text, whatever else. And so there's less of a need for someone to be an algorithmic expert, right? And so I think on the left side, you will have data scientists morphing into this full-stack data science role, very sophisticated. And on the right side, I think we will have a greater need to sort of democratize analytics for the masses. And what I mean by that is, if you and you and I talked about this a little bit before this call, is you have these functional analysts, right, in finance and supply chain and pricing and marketing and whatnot. And for the most part, especially in traditional industries, folks are still using traditional tools, right? And we still have practices and processes that are taking a day,
tons of time.
And so it's one of those things that, you don't know what you don't know, right? So unless you're sort of familiar with the programming frameworks and what something like a Python or R or whatever else can enable in terms of just speed, efficiency, creativity, you're not going to be able to sort of improve. But I see a greater need for companies to upskill their workforce to actually have those skill sets. Not only that, but certainly the baseline capabilities of like SQL, right, which is like your fundamental sort of querying, data extraction language still for companies. And so I think that morphing on the right side, bifurcation is going to happen.
Because we call it the appetite comes with the food, right? As soon as people know what happened, they want to know what's going to happen, and then what might happen, and what's the most probable thing. So we're getting close to the end of our time for the interview. I always have a one surprise question. What would you have told yourself 20 years ago that you know now?
Oh, so many things. Should we keep it professional?
You get to pick one. So take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. Maybe I'll pick a couple. Right. So I think one, I would have. I loved business, and I would never trade my business school experience. I think, UVA is a fantastic school. I would have gotten probably a master's in computer science degree when I was younger, right? I mean, I think I would have loved that. I think it would have been a fantastic experience. I think that's number one. And I think, maybe number two is, as sort of a younger analytics practitioner, right? An important lesson is focus. I mean, you hear this quite often, right? But like, focus way less on the analytics sophistication or the tools that you're using or whatever else, and much more on the impact, right? Much more on the actual implementable, actionable impact that resonates with business folks, right? Especially with end users and senior executives that are supporting you, right? I mean, I think that's a fundamentally very, very important lesson for all analytics practitioners, right? Is the method and the tools are secondary or tertiary, right? What matters is the actual business results that you're driving through your insights and the analytics, right? And I think many younger people, it's really hard for them to still understand that. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, because the science is exciting. That's the problem, right?
That's right.
It's this like psychic income of learning and discovering, and it's like, yeah, but I need to make a decision as a business user at 2:00 on Tuesday, man.
That's right. Absolutely.
One more? Do you have one more thing? Or those two? Those are the two.
That's it. And maybe investing in Bitcoin when it was like
when it's $100.
Yeah.
Well, Armin, thanks. We're building up this community. Hopefully, we'll get a lot more people in, and there'll be stories that other people can share. We have the website. Thanks so much for being here today, and thanks for everyone who's tuning in to Roadmap to Revenue. Thanks a lot.